My grandfather and my father were in the plumbing and heating businesses, and that's how I got my start. And I can remember as a kid cleaning fittings for my grandfather on a plastic pail in somebody's basement. So that's how I got to where I am today. Originally from Vermont, so up there, plumbing and heating kind of go together. They're not separate like they do things down here. So did a lot of low pressure boiler work and moved down here back in 2009. And then a couple of years later, found the boiler inspector job online, which I didn't even know was a thing. So luckily landed a job here, and I've been here ever since. So I've been here about 13 years now. And Jeremy Smith is the assistant chief for the North Carolina Boiler Safety Bureau, and I'll let him tell you all a little bit about himself.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Don said, my name is Jeremy Smith. I am the Assistant Bureau Chief for the North Carolina Department of Labor Boiler Safety Bureau. Been with the Bureau going on 11 years. Started off as an inspector, supervisor, and now the Assistant Bureau Chief. My previous background was doing non-destructive NDE or non-destructive examinations at power plants. So I've been in the inspection field for a while now. That was a lot of travel, but to Don, I found this online and gotten in with the Bureau and been glad and happy to be here ever since.
Yeah, so Jeremy didn't mention that most of those plants that he worked in were nuclear facilities. So yeah, that adds a whole other layer to boiler inspections, as you might expect. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation, a slideshow that I'm going to share with you all, and I'm going to try to go through it. I know you all are probably on lunch or whatever, so I'm going to try to get through as quickly as I can. There's some, we give this talk to numerous different types of groups, so there is a few slides that are pretty technical in nature, which I'll probably just skip past those. So if you see me skipping past, that's why I'm doing that, for because this is more of a meet and greet and letting you all know what we do and a little bit more about us. And then after the slideshow, I'm going to just touch on a few of the recent updates to our rules that we had last year that might affect some of the work that you do. And of course, we'll open it up to some questions after we're all done there. But if you have any questions as I'm going through the slideshow, or at any point, really, you can use I think there must be a raise your hand feature here on the Zoom somewhere, or go ahead and just jump in or type in the chat. Stephanie and Jeremy are going to keep an eye on the chat for me and let me know if you all have any questions. But feel free to interrupt, and I'll answer any questions you might have as we go along. So without further ado, I will get into the slideshow. All right. Again, so we are with the North Carolina Boiler Safety Bureau, which is a division of the North Carolina Department of Labor, and our commissioner, Mr. Luke Farley. Our mission is, of course, boiler and pressure vessel safety to protect life, property, and the environment from the hazards of pressure equipment failures. We began regulating high pressure boilers in 1935, and then later on heating boilers, and in 1975 they added pressure vessels. So we do both boilers and pressure vessels. So anything from a air compressor at a tire shop all the way up to a nuclear power plant, as we were just talking about. So quite a range of things that we look at. Again, we have 11 deputy inspectors out in the field that do these inspections, and 2 inspector supervisors, one for the east and one for the west. We all have commissions for in-service inspection through the National Board of Boiler and Pressure Vessel Inspectors. They're the main governing body for the codes that we work to, and they're based out of Columbus, Ohio. And together with about 125 insurance inspectors, we get all those boilers and pressure vessels inspected every year. So it depends on the type of location and the insurance that they carry on whether or not the insurance company does the inspections. And if they do, they still have to come to us and get a North Carolina inspection commission so that they can do those inspections. This is a picture from us from 2022. That's the gang. So, and then of course our office staff. So any one of these, if you call up to the office, the main line, one of these fine ladies will take your call and help you in any way. If you go to our website, the link is in the slideshow. I think I've shared that with you, right, Stephanie? If anybody needs that, they can probably, you can send them a copy of the slideshow if you'd like. But if you look up North Carolina Department of Labor, and there's a tab at the top called Safety and Health with a drop down, and you can pick boiler and pressure vessel safety. And it's they've done a great job revising our website. All the contacts are right there at the bottom of the page. You can download a PDF copy. You can download copies of our statute and our rules. We have policy notices and all of our forms that you might need. This is a copy of our inspectors territory map. You can also get this on our website. But this is what it looks like. And it has all the counties that are assigned to each inspector along with their name and their contact information, as well as the supervisors down in the lower left portion. And a little bit more about us. Like I said, we average about a little over 92,000 boilers and pressure vessels in the state that are subject to our regulation. So they have different inspection cycles depending on the type of equipment. So we typically do about 52,000 inspections per year. We run about 3,000 violations. That's about average for inspections per year, and about 4,000 pieces of new equipment. Last fiscal year, we ran about a 5% combined backlog, so overdues, which is pretty low for this country. For the country, they typically runs about 10% or more. So we're pretty proud that we run a pretty low overdue inspection backlog. And we had 6 accident investigations that we conducted in that last fiscal year. We average about 8. So thankfully, most of them don't end up with injuries or death. And so that's a good thing. So these are some of the common exemptions that you'll find in our statute, which again is on our website. These are the things that we don't look at. Air compressor tanks that are under 5 cubic feet, 38 gallon, pressure vessels that are 15 PSI or less, water heaters, which you're probably aware of, anything not over 120 gallon or 200,000 BTU. If it's over that, we will be looking at it. Instantaneous type water heaters. There's a laundry list there of the exemptions that it would have to meet in order for it to be exempt. Carbon dioxide vessels, anything owned by the federal government, anything in apartment buildings less than 6 families. There's a long list there on the website, but these are the more common ones. That one's some of these are a little more technical. Let's see. Yes, so sorry, on my screen, I can't see the top of my slide. It's covered by the Zoom platform stuff. So this is the clearances slide. Yeah. So this was one of the big changes from last year. Our clearances to boilers and pressure vessels was really kind of convoluted. So we last year made it much simpler. So basically 36 inches from the top and sides for boilers, 18 inches for water heaters and pressure vessels. But we will take into account manufacturers' installation recommendations. So if you are installing a water heater or a pressure vessel, hot water storage tank or a boiler, and the manufacturer says that you can have less clearance than what our requirements are, just make sure you've got that paperwork handy for the inspector when they come to do your first inspection. And so you'll be able to show that to them, and then they'll accept that. I won't get into the air requirements too much. On this slide, emergency shutoffs for boilers. This is a common one that still gets missed, even though this one came into being in 2007. It's still one of the most commonly missed items when people install boilers. Now, these don't apply to water heaters, but they do to heating boilers. they have to have an emergency cutoff switch. So one thing that we did add last time around was we got a little more specific on boilers that are outdoors and ones that are installed in a large open space indoors, not necessarily in a boiler room. So those have to be within 50 feet. Emergency stop. And we did make it clear as well that the emergency stop cannot be located on the boiler itself, because of course, the point is if you walk into a room with a boiler and it's on fire and it may explode, we don't want you walking up to the piece of equipment to turn it off. You want to be able to shut that off from a distance. Fuel train inspections, they're not specifically addressed in our rules. We do look for regulator venting, but that's about as far as we go on the fuel train inspections. We don't, as you all probably well aware, we don't regulate contractor licenses. That's all done through the North Carolina licensing board of examiners. But we get that question a lot, so that's why it's on this one. Welded repairs to any boilers or pressure vessels have to be done by an R certificate holder, and the repair form must be sent to us within 60 days. So some things that we inspect that you might not be aware of. This is a large cold water hydropneumatic tank to provide drinking water. So you'll see these at some schools, mobile home parks, things like that. You'll often see tanks like this. These are some air receiver vessels. Of course, the old standard air compressor. And hyperbaric chambers. So we inspect these if they're operating over 15 PSI. We've seen a lot of these in the last several years at the wound care centers. The ones we normally see, though, have an acrylic clear shell, so you can actually see inside. Those are kind of neat. Autoclaves. We do a lot of autoclaves where they do lumber treating, rubber vulcanizing, things of that nature. This is your standard vertical boiler that you might see in a dry cleaner. Most dry cleaners have a boiler like this and an air compressor. So we go to almost all dry cleaners and look at their boilers and pressure vessels. This is a hot oil boiler. So there's lots of different hot oil boilers. This one was at a place that builds transformers for power companies. Some of them use food grade hot oil and for cooking foods and things of that nature. This is one of your newer types of steam generating boilers. And even little hobby boilers. If they're of a certain size, you can make your own hobby boiler as long as we approve them. And we do have a few across the state where they'll take these into shows and exhibit these. They're kind of neat little objects. Old steam engines. We have several big shows across the state that happen each year. So we inspect, I think, Jeremy, last count, we had like 40 to 50 of these that are active that get showed in the state. And we've got little trains and big trains. We inspect those as well. So we get asked a lot, well, what are you all out here still looking at these things? Well, I tell people you'd be amazed at the stuff that our inspectors find out there in the field. Now, this isn't the same boiler, but this is the picture on the right is a handhole in a boiler, and it's obviously been leaking for a very long time. It should not look like that. We've seen instances where those have blown out and filled a small room like the one on the left with steam and actually killed the owner or the maintenance person in there. It lets out so much steam it actually burned all their lungs. So this was a hot water storage vessel at a hotel, actually. Been leaking at the top for quite a while. This is one I came upon. It was a liquid propane tank that they converted into an air compressor receiver. That was an interesting one. This was a hydropneumatic tank at a mobile home park. I remember I did this. I took these pictures and I was walking out into the woods and I heard water and I said, that can't be good. And lo and behold, here's the pressure relief device, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, is, you know, probably the most important safety feature on a boiler or a pressure vessel, and it had been leaking. So someone cross-threaded a plastic plug in it, and it was doing that. And of course, it overpressurized, and that's what happened to the bottom. So it blew the bottom out. And then I got looking at it some more and found some pinholes. And of course, you find the old roofing screws screwed into the holes. They didn't even get that one all the way in, but yeah. So here's an air compressor at a tire shop, and you can see the seat clamp is holding a brake pad onto the gauge, and the other side is holding the relief valve closed because they wanted more air pressure. So their thought was, well, we're going to take that regulator and crank it up. But they said, this darn valve keeps popping off, so I'll keep it from doing that. Well, people don't realize that these pressure vessels and boilers, you know, they're designed to only have a certain maximum allowable working pressure. And that's why they have a relief valve, so they don't exceed that. Well, that's, some people don't realize that. So this is the kind of stuff that we see out there, and people don't understand that what they're doing is so very dangerous. Here's a flow switch on a hot water supply boiler. That's why we take covers off of things. You don't know if something's leaking, you open the cover and find out, oh my goodness, that's why that doesn't work. Here's a relief valve on the back of a cast iron boiler. And for those of you that install relief valves, you should immediately notice what's wrong with that picture. Of course, the relief valve is installed backwards. So that relief valve will never open if it ever needed to. And this is what would happen if that cast iron boiler were to explode. This one was at a Elks Club or something like that years ago, and it ran dry and got a slug of water, and it launched itself into the next room. So even these little cast iron heating boilers in the basement of a church could really do some damage. So this is a video of a guy, and this is what can happen when a gasket can get cut by a piece of equipment. You'll see this gentleman come walking through with a tank top on, and this is a textile mill, and these are little pressure vessels that have really almost boiling hot dyed liquid. And this guy walks down through here, and he was in the wrong place at the wrong time when this gasket failed. It's right there. And he got burned really badly. And this is what those things look like. And it was one of these orange gaskets that they had nicked with a forklift when they loaded in the fabric. So just part of what we look at. We look at gasketing. When it's visible to us, we check it out, make sure it's in good working order, because this is what people can get hurt. Fireside explosions in boilers are common. This one had to, most of the time they, for whatever reason, the fuel doesn't purge from the furnace, and it ignites with too much fuel in there, and then you have a large explosion inside the boiler, and it tends to do a lot of damage. This is a superheater at a power plant that ran dry and got just a little bit of saturated steam in it, and it did that. That plate is 1/4-inch thick steel plate, and it opened it right up like a beer can. It's amazing what can happen when water converts to steam rapidly. Some of the other common things we see, this is the bottom of that old blue air compressor. We all commonly see cracks where the legs are attached to the pressure vessels, because a lot of times they will bolt these things to concrete with no vibration absorption. So the vibration of the motor on top's got to go somewhere. Usually the weak spot is where they welded the legs on. And there's one that did let go. This one was just from a few years ago. And that's usually the reason that usually happens is people don't drain them enough because these tanks don't have lining on the inside or paint. So all that condensation that sits in the bottom will just start to slowly eat away the bottom of the tank. And we always say proper maintenance, trained operation, and periodic inspections by an inspector will greatly reduce the likelihood of catastrophic events. And that's pretty much what we do here. That's my slideshow. So I just wanted to touch on a few of our most important changes that might affect what you all do. The first one is relief valves for these water heaters, the new water heaters, the instantaneous type water heaters, like the wall hung types. Traditionally, our rules said you had to have a temperature and pressure relief valve on all water heaters. Well, we finally caught up with what the manufacturers were doing. And of course, as most of you probably know, there's no real way to get a probe type T&P valve in some of these manifolds that are coming out of these things. So they're being shipped with pressure only valves. And that's been acceptable to ASME code for a while now, but we finally did catch up. So, because we had writing variances and exemptions and so on. So we finally caught up in our rules with that. We already talked about the shutdown switches. That was in the slides, and we talked about the clearances. The only other couple things I want to touch on is pool heaters. Pool heaters are still quite an issue for us. So I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that in North Carolina with a pool heater, if you have valves on the inlet and outlet of a pool heater that can be closed, whether or not they're lockable or it doesn't matter. If they've got valves, they are going to be considered boilers if they're over 200,000 BTU. So that means that they have to be ASME certified and National Board Registered. Most of these pool heaters, you can buy them either ASME certified or non-ASME certified. And of course, the ASME certified ones are a little more expensive. So most everybody tends to buy the cheaper one. And then we come along and say, take it out. You gotta buy the ASME one. So want to bring that to anybody's attention who happens to install pool heaters, to keep that in mind. In rare instances, we do see where they get installed at pool level and they don't have to have the valves in there. And in that case, it's a true open system and the boilers would then be exempt and it wouldn't matter if they were ASME or not. And then the last thing I want to touch on is carbon monoxide detectors. We are currently working on a change to our rules to require carbon monoxide detectors in boiler rooms. So that's most likely going to be a minimum of 2 years away. Unfortunately, it's just the way things work here. But certainly I would like everybody to be aware of that and encourage their customers to put one in. We're going to be very broad about, we're not going to have requirements as to, what kind, brand or whether or not it has to be hardwired in. The fact is we just want to get one in the boiler room. And as long as it meets the UL standards for the one you're using, we're going to be fine with it. And as long as it has a test function so the inspector can test it. Carbon monoxide still continues to be one of the leading causes of death and injury when it comes to water heaters and boilers. So we're trying to address that. There's been I think 3 other states that have codified carbon monoxide detectors for boiler rooms. So we're trying to keep up with that as well. If you do go to our website, again, Jeremy's information and my information is right there. Our names are under our kind of, they're like a blue link. So you could click right on one of our names and it should pop your email right up and you can send us an email, or of course it has our phone numbers. Jeremy and I typically try to work our schedules around each other so that someone is here in the office. They do allow us to work from home 2 days a week now. So, but one of us is usually here in the office. So, but either way, if you call us, we'll leave a message. We will definitely get it. And we're happy to answer any questions and help with anything that you all need out there. So don't ever hesitate to give us a call.
Just to confirm, there's been no changes on low water cutoff rules. Those are all still the same.
Low water cutoff rules are still the same. I am working on I made some adjustments to that last year, trying to take into account some of the new steam generators and forced flow type boilers that we've been seeing in the last few years. CSD1 for controls and safety devices. They had it in the rules years ago that you could use temperature sensing devices in lieu of a low water cutoff. Now, these are specifically for forced flow boilers or steam generators. So there's been a lot of boilers that are still being put out with these temperature sensors in lieu of a low water cutoff. CSD1 took that back out of the book in 2015, I think. So we found this out, and there's work in progress right now to actually get that put back in. So Jeremy, we haven't made any other changes yet, I don't believe. We just added some language in there to try and account for what's going on out there. And then I know we are adding some language in there for high temperature hot water boilers and high temperature fluid boilers. But it's going to be the same requirement. It's not going to be anything different than what's in there now. Very good. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good day, y'all.